In this video, I'm going to cover running technique. So the first thing we want to think of with running technique is going to be the position of the rib cage and your pelvis as you're going. So when most people run, the tendency is going to be to slowly arch the back, push those ribs out, and pinch the shoulders back. And when this happens, your hips tilt forward like this, you're going to feel a lot of tension in your lower back. And this leads to a lot of things that we want to avoid. First of all, you'll tend to overstride, so you're going to really reach out in front of you, which is really inefficient for a variety of reasons. We'll talk about it a little bit more here in a second. But it's also going to put a lot of tension on specific muscles. Your hamstrings are in a really bad position to contribute in that position. Your quads and hip flexors are going to be working really hard to pull up. You're not going to be able to breathe very effectively because your rib cage is in a poor position to allow maximal inhalation and exhalation. You're not going to be able to rotate very much, so it's just a bad position to be in. So the first thing we want to focus on is still staying upright, keeping the eyes up. You don't want to have a forward head position, but we want to relax that mid and lower back and be in this nice straight up and down neutral position. So as you run, a good cue to think of is dropping the logo on the front of your shirt or your ribs down towards your belt line and staying nice and relaxed here as you run. Again, you want to keep the eyes up, looking straight ahead. You want to avoid letting the head come forward or staring at the ground. But even if that's happening a little bit, the bigger thing here again is to keep those ribs down, dropped towards the belt line. You'll feel your back stay nice and relaxed as you run. The second thing we're going to focus on is going to be pushing the world behind you and not reaching for the world in front of you. So as you run, you want to land with your foot underneath you, and then you want to think of pushing the world back as you go. And what this is going to do is it's going to help keep a nice high cadence. It's going to keep you from hitting the ground, overextending. When you overstride, when you hit, your body initially puts the brakes on, and then as you travel over, you try to turn it on again and accelerate. And so if you're overstriding every single step, you're decelerating and then re-accelerating again. Whereas if you land with your foot underneath you, again, somewhere from a mid-foot, you can even do a heel strike with your foot underneath you, that's okay. But what you want to avoid is this extended leg heel strike with your leg way out in front of you. So if you record yourself running in slow motion from the side, you should see your foot land directly underneath you. Again, anywhere from mid-foot, you can do a heel foot strike. I think landing just on forefoot only is not a good idea. You're going to get a ton of load in the foot and through the calf and tend to get a lot of overuse issues there. So again, landing with the foot underneath you, pushing the world behind you, and then as you recycle, then you bring your knee up and pushing straight back to the ground, push the world away, bring the knee up, foot straight down. Again, you're not reaching for the world in front of you. The third cue is going to be to think of rotating the sternum from 11 to 1 as you run. And what you want to do to really think of this is drive that motion by reaching back with your elbows, okay? So as you're running and you're coming forward, you're going to think of reaching back with the opposite elbow. So as my right leg comes forward, I reach back with my right elbow, that rotates me this way. As I come through, I'm going to reach back with the other elbow. And what that does, again, it helps keep that position where your ribs are dropped towards your belt line, and you're getting this rotation by moving your rib cage backwards, not by reaching forward and collapsing forward. So again, those are going to be your three main cues. That can be a lot to focus on initially. So start with one, just again, relaxing the back, dropping the ribs to the belt line. And then two, focus on the nice quick cadence. If you have a watch that records your cadence, you want to be somewhere between 170 and 180 steps per minute. That's going to vary a little bit depending on how tall you are. The taller you are, it's actually going to slow down a little bit just because your stride length's a little bit longer. By again having that quick cadence, you're not going to be hitting the brakes every single time you land. You're just going to be constantly propelling yourself forward, which helps distribute the load from the quads and the hamstrings. Everything is working well together. It's also going to diminish the amount of vertical oscillation or how much energy you're displacing vertically, and it's going to propel you in a forward motion much more. And as you do that, you'll feel like you're gliding across the ground, which is what you want. You want to avoid feeling like you're coming up and down and slamming into the ground with each step. So they're going to be your main cues. And then the last thing you want to focus on is a little bit of rotation. You'll see plenty of people who have zero rotation. Their sternum stays pointed straight ahead and they can run really well. You'll even see a lot of high-level runners run like that. So it's not that you can't run quickly like that, but that we want to focus on efficiency over just speed. While again, running quickly and having really good pacing is helpful, none of the requirements that you're going to have for your 1.5, 2 mile run, 5 mile run, anything like that are nearly fast enough to give up any efficiency in the sake of a little bit more speed. So play the long game. When you start to implement these things, you're going to probably feel like you're running a little bit slower because you're going to load new tissues in different ways. Your hamstrings are going to be working a little bit differently. Your quads are going to be working differently. So you'll probably feel more fatigued and might run slower initially. But in the long run, you'll become far more efficient. You distribute the load a lot more effectively. You can breathe more effectively, puts less stress on the heart, et cetera, et cetera. So again, focus on those 3 main cues and you'll find that your running improves quite a bit.